Thank you, Heather. Welcome, everybody. I am very pleased to introduce Mary Ann Holmes, who's from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and she's going to present today's webinar. I've known Mary Ann for many, many years, and she's a professor of practice and is passionate not only about sedimentology and paleogeology, but also about the issue of women in geosciences, especially faculty, women faculty in STEM fields and the geosciences. So with that, Mary Ann, take it away, please.
Thanks, Pranoti, and thank you everyone who's participating today. I really appreciate your time and attention. Throughout the next few PowerPoint slides, you'll see a set of question marks, which are prompts really for any questions that you might have, and we'll hold the questions and discussion to the end. So today, the next slide, please. I'd like to talk about the ADVANCE program, and many of you are familiar with the ADVANCE program at National Science Foundation. For those of you who aren't, I'll just give a little bit of background. It's a program sponsored by the National Science Foundation to increase the number of women on the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics faculty. Today's material then will be sort of summarized from many of these programs. There are about 50 institutions that have been funded by ADVANCE to date, and these are teams of social scientists as well as scientists and engineers and mathematicians who are working on this problem. If it was a simple problem, we would have figured out the answer by now. But by studying the issue and trying to come up with strategies, these institutions have been testing strategies. And so what I'm going to show you today are results from tested strategies. And one of the key things that I find working with the ADVANCE program is that when we find strategies that are helpful in recruiting and retaining women on the faculty, they're good for everybody, and so that's why we're presenting results from ADVANCE today. The next bullet shows the 50 institutions to date, and this webinar will be, these slides will be posted, I believe, right, Pranoti?
Yes,
and
correct.
You'll be able to click on this link to find out more information about each of the ADVANCE programs. So let's focus on retention. Next slide. And recent study published in Science demonstrates that the retention of faculty in the U.S. is low overall. The next bullet shows that less than half of faculty stay at one institution for their entire career. And the median time to departure, which is the next bullet, is around 11 years. This study also found that the greatest risk for loss of faculty is late pre-tenure. So faculty are either choosing to not pursue a career in academia, or they're lured away by another, a job outside of academia, or they may not be getting tenure. And as we all know, losing faculty is costly. Many studies indicate that it takes perhaps 10 years after hiring a faculty member to recoup the startup costs. So depending on how much the startup is, that's how much it's going to cost your institution. And so a question for discussion when we're done here is, why have faculty left your department recently? We'd like to know what are the reasons why faculty leave. Sometimes faculty get an offer that they can't refuse. And so it's not always up to the department as to whether you can retain folks or not. The next slide says that today's focus, there are two principal factors that determine faculty's intention to leave. And intention to leave is usually a question on surveys where we're trying to get at whether faculty are about to jump ship or not. So these two factors include department climate, and that is what does it feel like to work in the department. This is climate in the sociological sense. And the second factor is mentoring of faculty. And the mentoring process is, what I mean by this are those those mechanisms whereby we increase the transparency of processes and procedures for new faculty coming in. Now, there may be other factors that you found in your experience as faculty, as department chairs, such as faculty get an offer they can't refuse. And in the advanced world, we like to think of this as a victory for your department's great mentorship as your faculty move on to another position. But you may have found other factors, and that's the next two questions, question marks we'll talk about later. So when should attention to retention begin? You probably have your own ideas about this. Within the advanced world, it's pretty well determined that even during the interview process, so that's the next bullet, even during the interview process, how are you treating candidates as they come to your department to interview for a position? Do they feel like they're getting a welcoming and transparent and open interview process? So that's the next bullet. And when it comes time to negotiate the contract, it should be a fair and open discussion. So the candidate should feel like they really want to come to your department. They've gotten a good vibe from it. The startup processes also need to be clear and transparent for the new faculty member. For example, at my institution, the first paycheck doesn't arrive for 6 weeks. And this is an unpleasant surprise for most new faculty who arrive with, you know, they've got to pay their first down payment on some place to live, and they're still paying for the place they just moved from. So it needs to be very clear how the pay process is going to work. What are the benefits? How does the new hire go about utilizing them? Are there forms this person needs to fill out? So all that needs to be clear and transparent. Also, the processes of work at your institution. Is there a deadline for spending startup funds? Not knowing this can come as an unpleasant surprise to a new faculty member. And what kind of help is available on the campus for startup? Who does the new faculty member go to when they need to buy new cabinets for their lab, for example, or they need some help in proposal writing or what have you? So clarity and transparency both before and during the hire are vitally important for the new faculty member to feel welcome and to feel comfortable in the new place where they're working. Department climate then is it has a large impact on faculty job satisfaction and intention to quit. And what I'm going to, these bullet points come from a study by Rhonda Callister at University of Utah in her advanced program. And she found that climate, she was able to determine a number of factors that determine whether a person feels like they're in a good climate and whether they feel like they want to stay or they have an intention to leave. That first set of factors revolves around people and involvement, interpersonal social interactions, psychological safety, perception of isolation, pessimism and potential for change. And the second set of factors is work processes, procedures, and policies. Do the faculty have access to the information and resources that they need? Do they feel like the promotion and tenure process is transparent and fair? And the third set of factors, which is meaning and value, do faculty feel as though they have meaning and value in the work, is not really predictive of an intention to leave. And that is probably because most of us come to an academic position with lots of meaning and value. So we don't have any problem finding meaning and value, but we may find issues with the work processes, the transparency of the processes, or we may find issues with people and involvement. So the first two factors are the stronger predictors of women's faculty's intention to leave, but they also predict men's intention to leave as well. So you may find it useful to, the next bullet, you may find it useful to measure departmental climate through surveys, focus groups, and/or third-party interviews. And I would strongly recommend that you find the social scientists on campus who can help do that, because when we create questions that we want to try to find out about people issues, we who are studying atmospheres and rocks and earthquakes and so on don't often really know what's the best way to phrase those questions in order to get the answers that we're looking for. So if climate is so important, how should we go about making sure that it's improved or making sure that it's a good one? And remember, for climate, I think that what we're saying is this a great place to come to work every morning? So there needs to be zero tolerance for the worst aspects of climate, bullying, sexual harassment. I think this is pretty obvious. We all know this. We also need to have a sense of supportiveness and teamwork and positive treatment from coworkers and supervisors. These are all positively related to work satisfaction. So do we get an attaboy from time to time? Also, we want to have positive perceptions of the organization's leadership. And are they responsive? Are they communicative? Sometimes we could lose faculty because of things that are beyond our control, such as bad decisions made above our pay level. And some of this is within our control, but some of it isn't. Another thing that can improve climate is the sense of fairness of the rewards. Are the right people getting rewarded? But not only that, but are efforts that are being made in sort of non-traditional areas, like maybe outreach or work that towards increasing diversity of student body, for example, is that kind of work being rewarded? Next, do we have a perception of institutional support for work-life balance? So is there a stop the tenure clock policy at your institution? Is there some means of affordable child care? Is there a way for faculty to live their lives and support their families, elder care as well as child care, in addition to doing their academic job? This list of items, improvements in daycare, dual career hiring processes, and work-life policies, these things seem to have high impact on faculty's perception of the climate within a department and at an institution. And it helps when male faculty also perceive that these are just faculty issues as opposed to women's issues. And recent research demonstrates that work-life balance issues are faculty issues. They are not women's issues. Dual career needs is an important factor that can attract faculty and help retain faculty. If we hire someone and don't pay any attention to the needs of the partner, you're bound to lose this couple if both partners are excellent researchers and or teachers. So you may have ideas about how to improve climate in your department or things that you have tried that work. One thing that's not on this list of reference bullets comes from research that we've done at University of Nebraska and haven't published yet, and that is, it seems as though informal interactions have a big impact on climate. So if you're having opening semester parties at your house, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I think I just, okay, I'm sorry. It looked like I just got bumped off.
No, you're good.
Okay. Okay, thanks. You know, an opening semester party, banquets that celebrate the best student achievers or some faculty milestones, for example. Those conversations around the water cooler, an informal lunchroom, any time that you have an opportunity for faculty to get together on an informal basis where work is not the focus seems to really improve the climate. So have a party together is what our takeaway message is. Women are more likely to express an intention to leave overall. Their turnover intentions are highly correlated with dissatisfaction with research support. So that's the next couple of bullets. Very often women don't negotiate at the beginning of a job, and so they end up with less startup money, for example, or less research support. They may start off with lower salaries. They may also perceive fewer advancement opportunities as people ahead of them or people behind them are picked for chairships or awards, for example. And women have also expressed a concern about not being able to express their ideas, or they may express ideas at faculty meetings and then these ideas are poo-pooed or no one's paying attention to them. So women seem to have additional issues. The next slide is retention during the early pre-tenure period should focus on continued transparency of processes via mentoring. So this is the second thing I wanted to talk about today. And mentoring, in this sense, is really just about increasing the transparency of all of the processes for these early career faculty, for your new hires. Mentoring is being talked about a lot these days, but we find that mentoring is improved when there is some training of the mentor, when some sort of expectations are set out for both the mentor as well as the mentee. Successful strategies then, which are the results of several advanced programs working on mentorship. One strategy might be to have a faculty committee oversee a mentoring program for the department. So a couple of senior faculty who seem to be pretty savvy about how to be successful might make sure that new faculty are either receiving mentorship or they're doing the mentoring themselves. Secondly, it's clear that a single mentor is usually not sufficient. There should be somebody within the department to help people navigate departmental policies and procedures, but also there are college and institution level procedures. Also, outside of the institution, mentors can help new faculty get a broader perspective on their job and their job expectations, and can help introduce them to people who can become important when it comes time for their promotion and tenure bids, good letter writers, for example. Some advanced programs have started programs where they set aside startup funds for the new hire to either visit an external mentor's lab or bring the external mentor in for a talk and or an extended visit. So actually use the startup funds of the new hire to help them get the external mentorship that they need to be successful. Some institutions form peer mentor groups, so everybody who was hired this year or in the last couple of years gets together for informal lunches or sessions, say once a month. And at some of these are planned with, sometimes with the provost, the dean, or some key person that would help these faculty be successful. Mentees should be keyed into informal networks, so that just means introducing them around. Some of them have their own networks and you don't need to help them with them. Some do, especially if they're trying something new that's a little different from their dissertation. You may also have experience with mentoring programs that are successful, and we'd love to hear all about that. Once faculty are tenured, and this is a major milestone, I don't think that mentoring and attention to their climate should stop. In fact, a lot of research in the advanced program indicates that once people get tenured, they sort of go through a post-tenure depression, for want of a better word, where you're sort of wondering, well, now what? You know, I've been working my butt off for the last 7 years to try to get tenure, and now what's the next milestone and what do I do next? So actually, it's time for these faculty to start thinking about leadership roles, both within the department, the college and institution. You might want to help them, steer them to sit on college-wide committees. They also should be thinking about leadership roles in their professional societies, like the American Geophysical Union. It also might be a good time to reevaluate the workload. It might be time for the faculty to take a little break from either research or teaching and formally rearrange their workload if that's possible at your institution. And it might be just temporary. It might be, well, I want to get the faculty member wants to get going in a new research direction. So they need a little relief from teaching for a while. Or they may want to put more attention into their teaching and attend some workshops or something and put less effort towards their research for a little bit. And it's time to start thinking about what awards and recognition these faculty might be eligible for, or at least it's not time to stop thinking about that. So maybe their research gives them enough have to go up for a fellow in AGU or GSA or some other professional society, or at least to start getting some of the medals and awards that will help move them in that direction. So those are some of the ideas that have come forth from the ADVANCE program about retaining faculty, and I'm sure among the attendees here today there are some more excellent suggestions that I'd like to move on and hear about. The next slide shows some of the references and resources that I called upon to put this together. So, Heather.
Thank you so much.
Are you taking questions?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for your presentation. We do have some questions come in, and the first one actually is, what was your own advanced program about?
My own advanced program at University of Nebraska-Lincoln, the Advanced Institutional Award, focused on mentoring junior faculty, and we did that through a series of informal sessions. We would have a luncheon, and we would put together either an external speaker or preferably a panel of UNL faculty who got together and discussed some topic that we thought would be pertinent. And some of those ideas we got from the junior faculty and some from the senior faculty. So a really popular panel discussion was how to start up your lab. And we actually brought in people from the acquisitions, purchasing department, you know, the people that were actually going to help new faculty members buy those new cabinets and glassware or whatever they needed. And also had other faculty who came in and offered suggestions on how they started up their lab, how they continued to run their lab, you know, weekly meetings with their graduate students, for example, things like that. We also focused on dual career hires because Lincoln is in a pretty isolated place. There's not a lot for partners outside of this academic institution, and so we worked to try to find jobs for partners. And that was actually a pretty successful program. We'd hoped to have about 8 hires and had 16. And I will point out that of those partner hires, one got a divorce, and they are both gone now. So that sort of thing does happen, but it doesn't mean that an institution shouldn't pay attention.
So actually, along that same topic, can you discuss some of the successful resources that have been made available to dual academic hires in the advanced programs?
Well, there are models, I suppose, that would be useful, and one of these is the Dual Career Network. And I can add this to the references and resources. I see it's not there. This is an informal network of dual career offices that are usually part of HR departments and institutions. And they share best practices. And these are offices that are focused on non-academic positions for the partner. They usually work with a partner for about a year or some term limit and help them create a resume that will be marketable within that particular geographic area, and then help them make connections outside of the academic institution. And then for the way the Nebraska one worked, I think we're unique. And I've written a paper about it that I would be happy to share with everyone. It was in Nature. And we had a point person who communicated among department chairs and deans about a potential dual career hire coming up, because we contacted shortlist candidates before they came to campus, and then they would contact my office, and then we could set things up without the search committee ever finding out, so that they didn't discuss the partner when it came time to hire, you know, the person who actually applied for the job. So those are some things. There's also the Higher Education Recruitment Consortium, or HERC, which allows institutions to post all their jobs, and institutions pay a privilege for doing this, and then job seekers can go and search for 2 positions in a particular geographic area. So these work really well where there's a high density of academic institutions like the Northeast or California, or places in Texas, for example.
Great. We actually have some questions regarding diversity in geoscience departments. And the first is, we know that the NSF had the OEDG program, and it took about a decade or so to see the upticks in increasing underrepresented students in the geosciences. So how long has the advanced program been in existence, and are there actually data showing the longitudinal improvement of retaining women faculty?
Yes. So it's been around since 2001. There are now 7 cohorts, and the first 4 so 2001 they funded 7 or 8 institutions, and then 2003 they funded another 7 or 8. So that's what I mean by a cohort. And so really the longitudinal analysis is just now starting to happen. It's 13 years. So keeping in mind that it takes a long time to change things in academia, I've seen some data when I was at NSF last year as a program officer for ADVANCE, and I saw some data that indicates that there's been maybe an increase of up to maybe 30% women at the assistant professor level, and there's also been a significant increase in women at the full professor level, which is really what we were aiming for. Now, I can't give you those numbers. We're hoping that there'll be a publication coming out on the NSF ADVANCE website. It was supposed to come out in December, so when it's actually going to come out, I don't know.
Great.
Also, if I could mention, Abby Stewart was one of the first round PIs at Michigan, and she showed climate results, and climate survey results showed that climate actually declined after the 5 years of the program, and almost certainly because of an increase in people's perception of what was wrong. And now that it's been 10 years, the climate metrics are much, much better. And so it just takes a long time for these things to take effect.
That's fascinating.
Yes,
so do you have any advice on how to address some of those challenges of being in a department with a culture of, quote, sexism without sexists, or racism without racists, and really where the chairs and some of the senior faculty are just unwilling to see or acknowledge some of these issues? And they don't actually see their behavior as problematic? Like, what advice would you give to those individuals in those types of departments with that type of culture? Hard.
$4,000 question, yes. I think the most convincing evidence is that on implicit bias. And University of Michigan's STRIDE committee, and I do have a link, I think, to that. Or maybe I don't. I can add that as well. Michigan STRIDE and many other advanced committees have tried to imitate STRIDE. And what STRIDE is a committee of faculty, tenured faculty on the campus who educate themselves about implicit bias. And then they give presentations to faculty, to search committees in particular. And particularly when you frame it around a search, implicit bias research shows that we all share the same biases. So it creates a sort of blame-free space. For example, there's research that shows that we write letters of recommendation differently for men and women. We write letters for men that have stronger adjectives, that speak to the CV directly, and that are longer in length. And that the letters we write for women are shorter in length, have more personal references rather than professional references, and also have a lot of weird non sequiturs like, she's friends with my wife, or her health appears stable. Now, when I learned about that research, I went and looked at my letters of recommendation for graduate students to enter graduate school, and I found that the ones I wrote for men were longer and stronger than the ones I'd written for women. So this is a shared cultural bias that we have, that men fit the role of scientists better than women do, and white people fit the role of scientists better than non-white people. So I think when we learn that this is something we're all doing, and that there are mechanisms to sort of reduce the impact of these biases on all of our evaluative processes, that to me is the most helpful, because it removes blame and it focuses on how we can change our behaviors in small ways so that it's not real stressful to try to improve outcomes.
That's wonderful. And actually we have a comment from Dave Moak, who said he would be willing to share his thoughts. Dave, I'm going to unmute you now so you can speak. All right, you're on the line, Dave.
Okay, thanks. Marianne, thanks for a great overview. I just wanted to say that through Cutting Edge and a few other resources, we've got some information that may be useful to heads. I created one web page that draws heavily from ADVANCE information on how to recruit a diverse faculty. And as Marianne suggests, it has to start early. You have to plant the seeds, be very welcoming. And I made sure that links to a number of diverse agencies and professional societies are there. So in terms of the language that you use in the advertisements and so on, hopefully there's a lot of information that will help you recruit a diverse workforce at the front end. Then the second link that I sent that hopefully will be posted somewhere, the Cutting Edge Preparing for an Academic Career website has a lot of information to help young faculty negotiate their startup packages and their initial contracts. And I'll just say in my case, I felt that I was, as head, I felt that I was advocate for my young faculty coming in, knowing that this was the one time they were going to get some attention from the administration. So I helped them build in all kinds of things into their startup packages, like travel to workshops, a little bit of summer salary to jumpstart the research program. In 2 cases, I was able to get fully funded RAs to help them start their program, lab space, and that type of stuff. So I guess the take-home message is start early and be persistent in helping these young people.
Great, thank you so much.
Excellent, thanks, Dave.
We actually have another question regarding diversity, and the question was about underrepresented faculty. Do they have any different issues or challenges or barriers that need to be addressed relating to their retention within a department?
Well, my answer is just yes, and I'm sure Dave could speak to this more, but isolation is a huge issue for faculty from underrepresented groups. And what some of our departments on campus have found is that if you can help these faculty meet one another from different departments, so that's really helpful. They have all kinds of different, but I think isolation is the biggest one, and feeling like you're the only one. I might also mention that very often well-meaning, well-intentioned, we ask for these folks, women and people from underrepresented groups, to serve on all kinds of committees so that we have their voices being heard. And then we end up overburdening them with service work, which is not helpful to advance their career. So what one advanced institution, the University of California at Irvine, did is something called Gender Equity Advisor, or you could have Race Ethnicity Equity Advisor. And this is a person who's familiarized themselves with this implicit bias and other kinds of literature on the underrepresentation of folks in STEM. And then they serve as the voice for diversity on the search committees and the graduate admission committees and so on. And then you don't place that burden of being the one who's always speaking up for women on the women, or the one always speaking up for African Americans on the one African American. So I really like that. It sort of shares the responsibility for diversity among all the faculty.
That's great. We actually have another somewhat related question. And someone asked if you had any advice on how to deal with bullying from a senior faculty member when the victims are pre-tenure and are too afraid to speak up for fear of, different repercussions. Do you have anything to say on that?
I'd like to open that up to other participants. I have seen it, and I've got to think about how I would word that. Do other participants have ideas about how to deal with bullies?
I will go ahead and look through our participant list. If you would like to participate, you can either chat in the chat box or press the raise your hand button and I will unmute you. Dave said he would be willing to comment.
Oh, please.
I will unmute you, Dave, and you are online.
Hi, folks. This actually has been a very difficult situation for me, and it actually drove me to resign as department head. We have had a case with a faculty member that bullied numerous students, and in a way other faculty. And I have to say that the process has been very, very difficult because you have to follow due process. You have to document the many transgressions. And unfortunately, in our annual review system, I can comment on teaching and on research and on service, but I don't have a category that might be called civility or collegiality. And so it has been very difficult to document the various cases, the impacts, and because of the tenure system, initially you have to document an initial complaint. There's a year or even two of process following that where remediation has either occurred or not. And all I can say is that it's hugely difficult, it's distracting and debilitating, and unfortunately I just encourage you, if you're involved with this, to deal with it head on and don't let it fester. You just have to kind of cowboy up, as we say here in Montana, and head on.
Thanks, Dave. I have to agree with that. You can't let it fester, but it's really difficult. It may require a third party. Sometimes there's someone at your institution who's an ombuds person or something who may be able to come and try to settle differences. I mean, we may never be able to change a bully's sense of privilege that comes from being a tenured faculty member in this country, but if we can just change behavior so that they are aware, sometimes they're not even aware that that the way they talk is not on, like the way they've addressed a young faculty member is really rude, that everybody perceives it as rude. So sometimes the first step is communication. But I really appreciate Dave's point of due process from someone who's been there, done that.
Wonderful. We have another question that has come in. And she was wondering, how important is the opportunity to move into administrative positions within a university? And is it important as it relates to like faculty retention, or at least seeing women in key administrative roles?
Well, I can say that some advanced institutions really promote leadership among the STEM women faculty who are the targets of the grant. And they do so by generating things like shadowing programs, and many provosts or research offices are actually interested in getting this sort of extra help. It might be for a semester, or it might be for 2 semesters working on a particular project at the college or at the institution level. And some people, especially post-tenure, are interested in sort of expanding their skill set. But this is not for everybody. It's not essential. You know, many women faculty that we've talked to through the advanced program have said, leave me alone so I have time in my lab to get the science done. You know, I became a scientist to be a scientist. So I wouldn't push people who weren't interested. On the other hand, we had women who had never thought about administrative positions before our advanced grant started. And we started kind of nudging them, saying, well, you know, we've never had any women department chairs of STEM departments in arts and sciences. And enough of them were outraged that we now have about 3 or 4 in the college. So it may be that they've never thought about it, they've never been asked, and it may be that they really aren't interested. Of course, another route for leadership is through professional societies, and that might begin with nominating somebody to serve on a committee for a professional society and or nominating them for an honor, recognition, or award.
Great. There was another question that came in that goes back to underrepresented and diversity issues. And the question is wondering, is there really any role officially for NSF or NASA per se for some sort of oversight if departments are in violation of Title IX and do not actually correctly or they don't correct discriminatory practices? Can NSF or NASA actually do anything about it?
Unfortunately, no. No, they can't. I think the route to go is through your own institution and make sure that your institution values this, or someone up in the administration values diversity and, you know, puts their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, absolutely.